Wubba lubba dub dub! This is Bateau323, aka The Fester, with episode 2 of gameplay capture of Metal Gear Solid V or 5, The Phantom Pain. So, in today's episode, I went ahead and replayed the second mission. So this would be the considered the very first mission, as it were, if you jumped into Metal Gear Solid after you've already confirmed what Mother Base is, and you're going to go ahead and save Kaz. So, within that mission, you'll also see a list of additional objectives that you have to perform, one of which is to find a specific diamond right in the first place that you start. Another objective is to capture a particular commander at one of the bases in this map here. So, in today's episode, I go through and try to capture and perform all of this. And of course, once all that's completed, I go ahead and complete the mission and I resave Kaz and such. And doing all of these missions, it does take quite a bit of time, so you'll actually get to experience a quick day and nighttime cycle during this gameplay, which is great. In addition, I also try out the Phantom Cigar, which also helps to do time lapse to speed up through the day. Because one of the missions I found a little bit difficult because I didn't spot and tag the enemy in time, which is you actually have to capture or Fulton out the Russian driver. And if you recall, in the very first or the first 3 of my videos of gameplay, you'll notice that there was a truck, and I comment how if you wanted to infiltrate a particular area to save Kaz, you could jump into that truck and ride it all the way into that base and sneak in that way. Unfortunately, during this gameplay, I didn't get a good capture of tagging that enemy, so I had to just figure out and wait and see how in the world I would eventually run into that truck to capture the driver. So I managed to do that later on in this video capture that I'll cut to real quick. So in this first one here, I decided to just go ahead and quickly infiltrate the base a little bit, Fulton a couple of enemy soldiers, and just go ahead and just grab the intel, since that always seems to be good. And as you've seen throughout this gameplay, I've gone ahead and captured random little resources that are seen throughout the map, and those are good to capture because all of those resources get used towards your mother base that you can use to expand, and of course, once you get further and further resources, you're going to need to have those resources in order to develop content for use later on, or for ammunition, etc., all towards your mother base, since you have to actually process a lot of that material there. So at this part here, I go ahead and fast forward this area. I just quickly take out this guy. Now, at this point here, it's very key and important to understand. I try to Fulton the mortar, but then the Fulton balloon pops, and it failed. The reason for that is because weapon emplacements, cargo, things of that nature need to be developed for the Fulton system. And so right now, being that I just started, only people can be Fultoned. So just as that soldier just went away, that's the only reason why it worked, is because right now the Fulton system that I have only works on people, none on other objects. Through capturing of those soldiers and developing research in the Fulton system, I could then, capture weapon emplacements, vehicles, for the use of my mother base. Unfortunately, I did not realize that at that time, so I just wasted a Fulton system for nothing. Because obviously it failed there. And so whenever possible, go ahead and explore certain buildings when you can and pick up any random boxes, because again, all that is good and will be used at your mother base for usage of materials or research or ammunition, everything you'll need. it's all going to be useful to go ahead and do that. So I went ahead and fast forwarded through that area, and there's a cassette tape. Pretty much in this game, anything that plays music will have a radio. And so if you can find the radio, you can steal those cassette tapes, and then you can play those tracks whenever you want, in the helicopter or during mission, on your own personal little Walkman that you always seem to carry on your belt here. What I thought was a little funny is, depending on where I was hiding, it seemed like they would sense me. And the thing is, they could hear my steps because of how loud my movement was, because I was just below them. And then they would continue to explore, which again, this is great AI on Kojima Productions' part for making the team smart like that, because that's probably what would happen in a really hollowed out stone building. You would be able to hear steps below you if it's not properly insulated like that, which was great to see. But because I marked them, I can use my stealth skills and focus, and I can mark them and see where they are. So as you can see throughout this gameplay right here, picked up some biomaterial. I have no idea what the heck that is, but I see a diamond. But because I opened the door so quick here, he noticed, and then I get the reflex mode. You get more points in your performance review at the very end of a mission by disabling that. But honestly, I like having it because it allows you to make riskier approaches and moves with Snake by enabling that. And plus it gives you an opportunity to kind of recover from having the whole mission be on a whole alert mode for a good chunk of time until you escape or subdue the alarm system. And so here, he heard the commotion but couldn't identify where I was. So then, because he couldn't see me, I was able to do a tactical takedown, which you've seen in other portions of my gameplay that I'm able to do that. So in this case, I don't believe I decide to Fulton him. I just go ahead and throw him on the cot, like I did in the first videos. Throw him on the cot to hopefully let him blend in that he's asleep. And of course, I saw those common metals or materials, and I go ahead and pick those up. So in this gameplay, I only have about 10 Fulton systems here, so I use them here and there on a lot of these soldiers to start building up my mother base. But in part of my mission, I have to Fulton the commander and the truck driver, who in the last gameplay parked his truck not too far from where this guy is that I just stunned him. So it would have been great to have marked that truck in this gameplay, but I didn't. So I quickly stunned that enemy and went ahead and Fulton him out of here. So I'll go ahead and speed through to the next area that needs to go ahead and show you the next objective there that I complete. So at this point in the game, I've reached the the outer kind of base in between where you start and where Kaz is. And so in this part of the mission, or side objective I should say, I need to capture the commander. Now he's deeper inside the base now, so I'm doing my best now that I reached the edge to just try to scope out and mark up as many enemies as I can, because once they're marked, generally Snake's just able to keep track of where they are no matter where on the map, as long as they are marked. And because I'm in the cover of night making this approach, there's a few less soldiers out at night, and so going pretty much directly straight into it and up along the wall is just the quickest approach that I was able to manage to do this part of the mission here. And so I slowly make my approach up, try to keep quiet. I do take out this soldier there to the left that's about 49 meters away from Snake. And I do a tactical takedown, which does gain you a lot of points of XP as well as heroism for doing that kind of move versus just doing your standard headshot from a distance. since using your suppressor during gameplay, as you may have experienced from playing Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater, the prolonged use of your suppressor will eventually drain your suppressor's suppression ability, and eventually it'll just have to be removed, and you'll no longer be able to use the suppressor on your weapon there. And so you see the little status there on the lower right. That little graph there is an indication of how much of the suppressor I've used up already. So generally, when it gets to these points, I always do a physical CQC takedown instead of wasting ammunition as well as the suppressor. And here's where I start looking up if I can go ahead and fault in certain systems. So at this point in the game, I encounter the first set of soldiers near the entrance of that base in the back. And so two soldiers were talking at one point, they kind of split up. And that's the best part I love in this game, is you can now dive while crawling and moving to help prevent being seen, which is great now in Metal Gear Solid 5. So I take him out with a clean headshot on the second try, which works, but eventually I'm pretty sure the soldier up there kind of notices what happens and starts to make his approach, which again, in these games now, they see something funny, there's a weird noise, the AI will now kick into play here, so I try to mark him or get a better beat on where he is to be able to take him out like that. And so then both soldiers are down, and then in pretty much all Metal Gear Solid games other than the original Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation, when that game came out, you need to move the bodies, or else any patrolling enemy that comes by will see the body and immediately enter the caution phase as they search for the enemy who caused the incapacitation or death of enemy soldiers there. And so I go to hide the bodies over off to the ledge here, where I assume no one's gonna actually explore. And I even notice on the table there's some fuel there, so I go ahead and I pick that up. Like I said before, always do your best to pick up all those kinds of materials, because automatically, if you've noticed, even when you're playing through this game, or if you haven't, as you gather those resources, you're able to automatically just deposit them into your mother base. You don't have to do anything else to send them away. It doesn't take up a slot or anything like that as you pick up resources. And so here I try to mark a couple enemies that I can see, but since I'm pretty far away from them, they don't seem to see me. So then I try to go along this ledge here to get, again, an additional vantage point going into the base here, because much like proper sneaking missions and reconnaissance work, you want to get higher vantage point towards the target that you're about to infiltrate. So as I'm trying to scale this mountain to get a better vantage point down to the lower base and start marking up enemies where I can. And like I mentioned in my earlier videos, Snake is not like Ezio or Assassin's Creed, so it's not like any ledge can be climbed. It's very specific, and so unfortunately you gotta find that flat leveled ground shelf rock to climb up on, or else it doesn't work. And so at this point I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward through a lot of this, because in this instance for myself, the commander's in that building I pointed to right in the upper right. And as a clear indicator, hint to you guys, commanders tend to be wearing berets. Those European soldiers' hats. They're not for armor, they're not visors or anything like that, or they just wear the simple berets. They kind of fold over the side. of your head there. So I haven't identified him just yet, but I'm just telling you now, from what I remember, that's where the enemy commander is. So I slowly start making my approach down just to get closer into the base and start trying to identify the commander. Now, in Ground Zeroes, as soon as you identify your target, you get a kind of a context noise saying that you've identified your target, whatever the case is. But since this is kind of like a submission, I don't believe it immediately did that for me when I tried. So I start making my way around to try to see if I can see any additional enemy movement to identify the commander here, but I'll go ahead and speed through all of this here and get to the part where I actually identify the commander here. Yep, random soldier there, didn't see him, but that's why I personally like having the reflex mode on, but if you want that extra challenge, don't. So yeah, I explore to see if there's anything in them. And look what I find here. Nice little diamond. So yeah, I'll go ahead and fast forward through all this here as I continue to explore the base, trying to find that commander there. So at this point here, I think I identified most of the enemies, but you see that beret? That's the commander. So for me, that was in the from my approach as you go towards the base, he's in the upper right, or I'm sorry, upper left portion of the base. Now the funny thing is, I managed to tag him, yet still didn't make a little indicator saying, hey, you know, you've identified the commander as part of your objective. So I just assumed that he was, again, based on that that beret there. But eventually I go ahead and get close enough to go ahead and capture him. So at this point here, I find the alternate generator for the other half of the base, and I go ahead and turn that off to kind of help provide more cover for my approach into this certain area, since there's like a lot of enemies. However, as I fast forward through a whole chunk of this area, I continue to explore a couple other areas of that base. So in the end, I went ahead and captured the commander, and this is just my escape as I'm leaving the area. The only thing to mention or point out here is once I took that commander, it seemed that it put the entire area on alert. So suddenly all the soldiers in certain areas or bases went from low level of alertness to moderate level of alertness. So that made this last approach here to get Kaz a bit more difficult than I would have liked. Especially by then, I used up a lot of my other resources just getting through all sorts of shenanigans trying to get that commander and such. But we'll go ahead and fast forward through to get to that next zone here. So at this point here, I've already gone through a small little checkpoint. I'm at right at the edge of the base where Kaz is, and I go ahead and use the Phantom Cigar to elapse time here. You hear the car go by, a sandstorm, which is great, and now it's about 8:18 p.m. and now I'm making my approach into the base there. Again, because I had captured the commander, the whole surrounding area where all the enemy troops are, they're now under a higher alert. So there's a lot. Seems, at least in my my impression, doing this mission again, having taken that commander, there's a couple of more enemy soldiers around the area doing their patrols, whereas before it didn't seem like there was hardly any at this point the first time I did it. So at this point here, I've gone ahead and captured Kaz, as you can quickly see in the fast forward. And of course, those frog ghost guys, whatever you want to call them, the skulls, I think they're referred to as. They show up on cue since they cast their misting shadow over the whole area, and there's not much else we can do about that. And so you're forced to have to go through them in order to get to the alternate landing zone. So one of the objectives is to get past these guys without being detected. Now, the trick I learned to how to get past them was in general just to lure them off to where I am with my horse right now, to clear that path to the right in order to allow myself enough space with Kaz, over my shoulder, to get past them. Now, I go ahead and mark them because it becomes really important, because just like in daylight, trying to get past normal soldiers or enemies, under low, or actually low visibility cover like this mist, enemies can't really see you very well beyond a specific, range or meters of visibility. So here I'm just trying to figure out any alternative route to get around here. But I'll fast forward right to where I start making my approach, since I try my best to lure them out. So at first I wasn't sure if they just have a predisposed path that they take, but as you can see, as I move over to the right, even though I'm really far away and they're slowly moving or inching themselves over like zombies, they'll eventually actually start moving towards my general direction. And that's how I find out that because of where I am on the map, it's going to slowly lure them towards me. So at this point here, had I known, I could have probably made my approach and they probably wouldn't have spotted me. But I go ahead and retreat because suddenly their movement becomes a lot faster than before. And this is where I learned that I can lure them away and then go back around the way I came, as long as I move very quickly here. Now right here, I have no idea if I got my lucky break, but see, he spotted me. He thinks he sees something, and at that point he was about 17 meters away from me. Still suspicious, but because I kept moving, I was able to get away. That he does move forward to approach, but see right here, as I continue to move forward, I'm not sure if these guys are gonna be attracted to D-Horse if I were to call them from here. So I continue to stay low with Kaz, carrying him, and I just keep moving forward until I feel generally safe away from the skulls, zombie dudes, from getting close enough to me. And I know pretty soon at some point I go ahead and I call D-Horse, and just like in Witcher 3 or in a lot of other games, if you are looking at D-Horse and you call him over, he will slowly make his way over to you, which is cool because you can see how that crosshair starts moving and it starts going through the skulls guys, and they don't even react, which is great. They could care less about my horse, but it feels like he's taking forever. So then I realized I can just look away, call D-Horse, and suddenly his trip was now cut to instantaneously. He's right there where I need him to be. And still, the skull guys haven't even moved an inch from where I left them behind. And so at this point, I go ahead and make my approach to get to the LZ, and I just sprint down. But yep, that's, I would say in total play time, I think it took me almost about 35 minutes to 45 to complete all the objectives, and mainly because of course you're just trying it for the first time, as I was, trying to figure out how to do things. Of course it's a lot of trial and error, but in the end I think it all worked out because I ended up completing it all. And then once I get onto the helicopter and I drop off Kaz and myself inside, I get the nice little orange indicator saying, hey, I completed all 6 objectives. And then it goes into its normal cutscene process and giving me my evaluation for performing all missions. I think in the end I ended up getting a B. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, samples of different gameplay of how I got through certain areas. I'll do my best to try to show more of the actual gameplay of where I complete certain objectives to try to help you guys out, whoever cares to continue watching. But again, I appreciate the viewing, and of course please like and subscribe as I continue to start my venture doing these kind of game castings and commentary over certain play missions and everything. And of course, if you guys have any questions, I'll do my best to let you guys know how to resolve certain quests or questions you have. Try to answer them all. So, alright guys, see ya.